Hi, I'm Brian Harmon, and we're Harmonizing Humanity. And my guest today is Sonnjea Blackwell, and she teaches improv. If you don't know what that is, you'll soon find out. My first question is, why don't you tell us what improv is?
Okay. The dictionary definition of improvising is basically just making something out of nothing, or out of whatever you have at hand. So there's improvisational jazz music, there's lots of types of improv, but my niche is improv comedy, and what we have at hand is nothing except for the suggestions the audience gives us. So we'll ask for a suggestion like a relationship or a location, and the audience will give us that, and then we'll make up a scene completely spontaneously on the spot based on that suggestion. So the first thing I have everyone do is we go around the circle, and everybody tells, one at a time, everybody tells something they did today, but it's the most mundane, boring thing ever, like I sharpened a pencil or I brushed my teeth. But they tell it like they won the lottery, so with big enthusiasm, like I brushed my teeth, and then everybody else in the circle claps and cheers for them as if they won the lottery and they're planning to share it. So it's big excitement.
I made my bed!
Yay! So we do that. It breaks the ice, and it gives everybody the feeling that of what's going to happen in the class, which is a huge amount of support and encouragement.
Right.
So there's what I'm trying to convey to people. Tina Fey has a quote, famous improviser, that there are no mistakes in improv, only opportunities. But people can't really wrap their brains around that because they're like, well, there must be a way to do it wrong. But there's really not. And so that's why I start with that, because people say the most boring thing ever, that's not funny, I brushed my teeth, it's not funny, it's not clever. But everybody claps and cheers, and that's to give people the feeling of, oh, this is how this class is going to be. I don't have to worry about if I'm funny or anything. It's just going to be fun and supportive. So that's the very first thing we do in the class.
Yeah, tell us why you got started in improv.
All right. I originally started taking improv for two reasons. One was to overcome shyness. I was very shy. And the other was to overcome writer's block. I was working on my third novel, and I was completely stuck. And as a writer, I spent a lot of time by myself, which was not good for my shyness because I was spending more and more time just alone in my house. And that was just making me even more shy. And so I kind of knew in the back of my head I needed to do something to deal with these issues. And I happened to be reading an interview by an author that I like, Janet Ivanovich, and she had said, oh, I guess I said a good name.
My wife's
I got
eyes
reaction
just
from the
lit
camera
up
person.
back there.
Yeah.
My camera person.
Yes. And she talked about taking an improv class for that reason, for writer's block. And I was reading her novels at the time, and I thought she was hilarious. And I was like, well, if she thinks improv is good, maybe it'll work for me too. And a couple weeks later, a Parks and Recreation catalog came to my house, and there was an improv class listed in it. So I thought, okay, well, it's obviously meant to be. And so I took the class and fell in love with improv. It did help with those. It tremendously helped with both of those things. Not nearly as shy as I can still get shy in certain situations, but it basically worked for that. And I finished that novel, so I got over the writer's block. But I fell in love with improv, and so I made that my career instead of. Well, I still write, but.
Yeah, people that meet you now might be surprised that you were very shy at one time.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I don't believe that.
Well, it's funny because people who know me now can't believe I used to be shy. People who knew me back, in high school or college or younger, can't believe I'm the way I am now. They're like, you're on stage, you perform, that's not you. So I have before improv Sonnjea and after improv Sonnjea, two different people. So.
Yeah, like, what are you taking now?
Yeah, exactly. But I find that most of my students, people who want to get into improv professionally or to become actors or whatever, or because they are actors, they tend to take classes in Hollywood from the big improv schools like Second City, Groundlings, The Nerdist. People who take classes from me are usually what I like to call regular people, not actors, who are taking it for personal reasons, personal development reasons. So shyness is a big one. Public speaking, people are terrified in their jobs. They have to do presentations, and they heard from somebody or read an article like I did that improv will help them with these presentations. So
Mhm.
the vast majority of my students are just regular folks looking to improve something. You know, communication, they've realized they don't listen well, so they want to take improv that helps with that. So that's kind of why I was taking it, was for personal development. So it makes sense that those are the people that I attract to my classes. So.
Yeah, it helped me a great deal with my shyness also.
Yeah, I can see how shy you are.
Okay, that's great. And I might add, it for the audience is a lot of fun. I've only been to 2 lessons, and it's just really fun. And afterwards, people tell me I'm funny, and I'm not used to that, so that's really nice.
Yeah, it's good. And magical things just happen during improv. There's a structure to it. There are rules, like with any sport or game, and people think that it's just effortless, or you just say witty things for no good reason. But there's a structure to it, and when you learn the structure, which you started to learn in your 2 lessons, then it makes sense. And by playing by the rules, funny things happen, and people tell you at the end you were funny. So
Right.
through no fault of your own.
Yeah, yeah. And, I imagine it would be good for brain function for people who are starting to lose it a little bit.
I think it is very good. There have been some studies. I don't think that anything is conclusive, but there have been studies as to how improv does help that. You know, because it's there's aspects of it that are about thinking quickly, thinking on your feet, and it helps make those connections in your brain. So they have studied it for use with Alzheimer's patients and things of that nature. I'm not an expert in that area, but I do know that you're right. It is helpful for brain function. So I haven't explored that too much.
Right. Yeah.
But I feel like it helps me with that. I feel like I'm much quicker on my feet than I was before I did improv. You know, and I can remember things much better. And except for I just forgot what I was going to say. I really did. Right,
well, we're all getting older,
right?
as I always say. That's my excuse.
Yeah.
Well, except that doesn't really work for me, because when I was 10 or 11, my 5th grade teacher referred to me as the absent-minded professor.
So that's just who you are.
Yeah, when it's time to, everybody's going out for lunchtime, I'd get out to the lunch area and I go, uh-oh, I think I forgot something.
Forgot the important part of lunch.
Didn't occur to me that it was lunchtime. I figured must be another recess or something. I don't know. I just do what I'm told. You know. I'm going to forget something, and that, of course, stress is what makes it worse.
Right. Well, that's an interesting point too. That's the same principle in improv. People get really worried about wanting to know what's going to happen, and you can't know what's going to happen because you don't know what your suggestion is going to be.
Right.
But they worry, and that makes it so much worse. They're like, I'm going to try and say something funny, or I'm going to try and remember this thing. And the more they try anything, the worse their scene is, because they're not in the moment. So the best way to do improv is to listen and respond. It's not about trying to do anything. It's about just listening to your scene partner and responding. And like I said earlier, magically funny things happen when you do that. So.
Right.
So.
What do you call that game where each person says a word and altogether you make a story? You start off with the...
Oh, I just call it one-word story.
Okay.
Because we're telling a story. Again, we're in a circle. We get a suggestion for the time somebody did something, like the time Bill went to the store. It's just a very mundane story. And then one person at a time, saying one word at a time, we tell the story. So if the 3 of us were telling a story, I might say Bill, you might say went, and you might say to the store. You know, we would continue that story. In the circle with everyone, there's a few points to the game, but part of it is to make eye contact with the person next to you, to help teach that. Eye contact is really important, as it is in real life, but it's very important in improv, because you're 2 people with different life experience, and you have the suggestion, and how on earth are you going to make something make sense, right? How are we going to get on the same page? Well, eye contact is a good way to start that. You know, we get on the same page, at least we acknowledge we're on the same team, we're in this together, and that takes us a long way towards getting somewhere. And then telling the story is, we have to listen as the story kind of unfolds, because I'm talking about your own idea. I might have idea that Bill went to a pet store and got a cute little puppy, but if we're talking and it comes out that Bill went to the liquor store, and then I'm trying to force the puppy into the story some way because that's my idea, then we have a convoluted story that makes no sense.
Right, and then you're trying to switch gears from a puppy to a...
Right.
What am I switching? Oh, liquor store, wait a minute. And the idea is you just do it like that. You're not supposed to stop and think about it for...
Exactly.
10
So
seconds.
if you've been listening as the story unfolds and you have no idea, you're not holding on to any agenda in your head,
Right.
then as the story unfolds and you're hearing it and listening, then it should be relatively effortless when you hear one word to then deliver your word when it's your turn. So, yeah.
Right. I guess one of the problems that shy people have, too, is eye contact.
Eye contact is huge for people. Eye contact was one of my hardest skills to learn when I first started doing improv. Probably because I was so shy, and it's very it's scary to make eye contact with people if you're in that mindset. But my instructors, I had several different instructors, and they just kept forcing me to make eye contact. And honestly, at first I would make eye contact for like the briefest second and then look away. I would just look down. I was like, I'd pass by your eyes, you know, like they were there for a second. I just couldn't hold eye contact.
That's hard to imagine. Hard to imagine.
Yeah. So, but that's how, you know, it shows you how it helps.
Yeah.
You know, it just, I kept at it and I kept at it, and it's not like keeping at it like in the same sense of keeping at algebra or something like that, because it's fun, you know. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there who think algebra's fun.
Crazy people!
But in improv class, you're laughing, you're playing games that hardly feels like you're trying to do anything. It just feels like you certainly don't feel like you're working at eye contact. It feels like you're up there playing games, and your instructor's encouraging you to make eye contact or whatever it might be. But it's so much fun, and you're laughing, and you become instantly friends with the people in class with you because there's this shared camaraderie, because you're all in the same boat. You're all kind of scared, and you all realize from the very beginning that the only way this works is when you all have each other's back. So it's a very bonding experience, and so when it's that supportive, then you feel like you're just playing with your friends, and then all of a sudden, a few weeks go by and you're like, wow, I can make eye contact with people, or wow, I'm not so shy, or I can go do a presentation without sweating buckets, or whatever it might be. But you feel like you got there just by playing and having fun.
Right out my first job out of graduate school, I was teaching people how to do job interviews.
Okay.
And as well as helping them find jobs and you know, stuff like that. And one thing that I would sit at the desk and they'd be sitting here, and if they were, you know, looking down at my shoes or at their shoes, I knew that they were going to have a problem. Look at their job history and you go, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And I talked to them about that, and you know, we'd work on. But I didn't have the great idea of making it into a game.
Right.
Yeah. But it's so important. If you're interviewing somebody and they won't look at you, you go, what's the problem?
Right.
You know, they don't like me or what?
Right. Best case scenario, they're socially awkward, which still may not work in your office setting or your job setting.
Yeah.
Worst case, they're super creepy, or they've got something to hide. You know, but you can't tell. Are you a liar? Are you an axe murderer? Or are you just really shy? You know. And it is. People don't know if they can trust people when they can't make eye contact with them. So.
Right.
It's valid.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Some of the one of the games that we did involved interviewing, where you had an interviewer and two people that were being interviewed, and it was like, fortunately, I was the one doing the interviewing the first time.
Oh, okay.
And because you set the agenda, and then the other people have to respond to.
Right. It was sort of like this. It was like a talk show, right?
Right. A talk show.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I have a lot of games in my head, so I'm trying to remember which ones I did.
Yeah. Those 99 games.
Yeah.
Which one is this?
Yeah. Which one? Yeah. So that one is one where one person is sort of the host of a talk show. We get a suggestion from the audience what their topic is for the day. Today
we had intelligence.
Okay, right. Yeah.
Lucky for me.
Today we're going to be talking about intelligence, and you played the host. So whoever's the host introduces the made-up names of their guests and their areas of expertise, in what way they're experts in intelligence. So one person I don't remember now what you said, but one person might be a professor who studied intelligence, you know, and another person might be a high school dropout that thinks that street cred is more important than book learning, or whatever.
It was almost like that.
Okay,
yeah.
So it's probably stuck in my head. So the host labels those two other folks, and then they take on those characters, and then you interview them as if they're that way. So it's an opportunity. There's a lot of learning going on, improv learning going on in this game. One is the person who's playing the host is a character, and you have to think on your feet because you, based on the suggestion, you have to come up with these characters and different points of, different ways in which they're experts, which then allows them to create a character with a particular point of view on that thing.
Right.
So you have that part. Then they have the part where they have to create this character based on what you tell them, and then answer questions. Okay, if I'm a high school dropout and I think street cred is the most important thing, how am I going to answer these questions? And it puts people on the spot and forces them out of your head, because 99 times out of 100, the label they get is nothing that they are.
Right.
I mean, somebody might label you, oh, he's a retired economics professor. That's not going to happen.
Not usually.
So it might, and then you can play off what you know. But one of the funniest ones I ever saw was a number of years ago, and the fellow was labeled as a farmer. I'm not sure. I can't even remember exactly what type of farmer, what it was about. But this was a super urban guy with, a couple of degrees, and I don't even think he'd driven through the country, But he knew John Deere tractor, and he was so specific about this John Deere tractor and his grandpa, and it was so funny because it was so against type, But he just made things up, and he committed to that information, and commitment will get you everywhere in improv. So he just acted like he knew, and all of us, the whole class was just dying laughing. It was so funny. So, but yeah, he had no first-hand experience of farming.
Yeah.
I think he ate food. That's all he knew about farming.
Right. It must grow somewhere.
Right. Heard of it, farm.
Yeah. In our case, our one was a professor of neuropsychology or something.
Oh, okay.
And so she knew all about that, and you had the audience come up with
some of the questions, right?
And they said, "Oh, well, where does intelligence in the brain?" And she started making up stuff about the obligula or some crazy thing.
Yeah, that's right. She did. She had some.
Yeah, and the prefrontal cortex. That's an important part too, because she's going on making all this stuff up.
Right. Yeah, she knew words. She knew brain parts. And then she just made up their functions, but she said it with conviction. And
Yeah,
like,
she did.
I guess she knows.
Yeah,
yeah.
And the other guy was had researched intelligence testing for the last 40 years or something.
Oh, that's right. And he decided it was invalid.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they had this debate between them.
Right.
Yeah. And he's just making up all kinds of stuff. It was great.
Yeah. And what you learn in that game too is that, and this is true in improv in general, the more specific you can be, the better. For some reason, specifics are funny to audiences. Like I could say, I was wearing jeans. Nobody cares. But if I say, I was wearing Wranglers, that'll get a laugh 98% of the time. I don't know why. Wranglers are not inherently funny. But the more specific you are, the more the audience visualizes that specific. And then they can relate in some way. Like maybe they know some people that they have a judgment on the specific. Like Wranglers are tacky. I don't believe that, so if you have Wrangler as a sponsor, I'm sorry. But whatever it might be, they relate in some way. So it's relatable human behavior is what you're looking at. And so the more specific you can be, the more the audience can relate with you. And so in this exercise, and both of these other students were doing was being very specific and citing statistics and studies and making it seem really real. So you can just say, well, some studies show that intelligence testing is biased. Fine. But he was like, several studies at the University of Chicago have shown that in 98% of cases, blah, 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 blah. And then it's like it's so real, then it's, it's fun. A, it's funnier, and B, people can relate to these things. So.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that was fun. That was fun. Let's talk a little bit about how improv improves people's lives. We talked about if you're shy or if you're a writer, and can you build on that a little bit for us?
Elaborate on that?
Elaborate. There you go. A little improv here.
Sure, I will improv. Improv. I feel like improv can help everyone. I truly believe that, and it helps in so many ways. It helps you learn to listen better. It helps with the eye contact, like I said. It helps you be able to articulate your ideas better, because you start, like we talked about earlier, you start making faster, quicker connections in your brain, so there's less of that stammering, trying to think of an answer. It makes you just feel a lot more comfortable in your own skin, like you're not nervous in job interview situations or running into new people or meeting new people at parties or whatever it might be. I just feel like ultimately the most important thing improv really teaches people is to be in the moment. And we're all improvising all day, every day. We don't know when we get up in the morning what's going to happen. We might have a plan of what an agenda of what we're intending to accomplish that day, but inevitably things happen, right? You go to the grocery store and they don't have what you wanted, so you have to go somewhere else. Or you run into someone you weren't planning to, you didn't know you were going to see, and you have to have a conversation with them. Well, it's not like you pre-plan that conversation. You just talk, you listen, and you respond, and just like that's what we do all day long is we improvise. But we don't do it with awareness, and we don't do it with the intention of staying in the moment. And so that's what improv class is. It's doing stuff we all do anyway, but with a focused intention of, okay, I am really just in the moment right now. I have no agenda. I don't have a plan. I don't know what Brian's going to say. I just have to sit here and be okay not knowing. And honestly, people are not okay not knowing. We want to know. It's why this election cycle is so stressful for people, because nobody knows what's going to happen. And I mean, there's some wacky options out there. So it scares people. And none of us really, I don't think humans are really wired to be okay with not knowing. You know, we want to plan for disasters and be ready and be prepared. Life isn't always like that. And so improv really starts to teach you to be okay with not knowing and just kind of go with the flow. Honestly, that's the most, shyness and writer's block aside, that's the most important thing I've learned from improv, is to just be okay with life and let it unfold and not try and force it into my idea of what it should be, whatever it is in any given moment.
It seems to me that it helps one to think outside the box.
For sure.
Too. When you look at like all these little riddles that are supposed to show that you're intelligent,
right,
if you can get them right.
Yeah.
It's just thinking out of the box. The answer's just it's not where you think it's supposed to be.
Right. And I think you get that way because improv pushes most people out of their comfort zones. I mean, I think there's a few people who are natural hams and that are just fine with doing wacky stuff like we do in improv. But for me, certainly, and for most of my students, it pushes you out of your comfort zone. And I think just by allowing yourself to be pushed in that way, it helps you start thinking outside the box. Because you have your set way of doing things. That's your box. Your box isn't the same as mine. And so when you're collaborating with other people, it sort of rubs off on you. You see how somebody else reacts or what they do or what their character says in a certain situation. You're like, wow, I never would have thought of that. I mean, never. That would never been in my wheelhouse. But now that I've heard somebody else do that or I've seen them do something, and I was like, oh, that was a valid option. That totally worked. So now maybe I'll do that next time or I'll do something like it. So it expands your abilities and it expands the way you look at things. So now you're thinking out of your box, right? I'm thinking outside the box because it's not what would have naturally come to me.
Yeah, interesting. There's so many times when people see something exciting that they'd like to do, but they're afraid to because they don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
I mean, who knows? Maybe they'll die. No, I don't know. But something terrible is going to happen.
Right.
Maybe they'll be embarrassed or something, so they don't do it, and they miss out on so much that life has.
I think it's that embarrassment thing. I think we're just conditioned to not make fools of ourselves and not look stupid. I mean, that's a huge thing for me. Something I still struggle with. But when everybody's in the same boat as you, and this is going back to everybody becoming such good friends, I embarrass myself, you embarrass yourself, somebody else. We all have embarrassed. Now, we've been here together for 2 hours, and all of us have done something that could be construed as embarrassing. Because you go up and you say something silly, or you have to cluck like a chicken, or you do the machines where you're doing weird motions and making crazy sounds. A lot of people, a lot of grown-ups just don't want to do anything embarrassing like that, and it's been so long since most adults have just played that they're not sure it's okay. I mean, they have to seriously give themselves permission to just go be silly and risk being embarrassed. So I think that's a really good thing for people.
I don't suppose you've seen the show Brain Games?
No, I haven't. I've heard of it.
It's on Netflix. And it's also on TV too. I don't know if you can search for it or
Okay.
anything.
Well, I have Netflix. I can check it out.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, it's great. Brain Games.
Okay.
But the one I saw last night was so interesting. They would show adults some kind of a drawing, like a line with a circle and lines going out or something, and they'd say, "What does this mean?" And they could come up with one or two things, and I was just like everybody else. And then they would show it to kids, and kids would just go,
Yeah.
come up with all kinds of stuff, because they don't know that you're supposed to think in this
Right.
limited way. They can just, their imaginations are just craziness. And when you look at it, you see, yeah, that's right, that really could
It
be.
could be that.
Oh, that's a guy with a crazy haircut. Oh, yeah, that could be. Oh, that's a sunset. Oh, yeah, that could be.
Right.
Or it's a flower. You see how yeah, that could be. And they're just coming out like that.
Yeah.
And
Well, I think the more you do that, the more you can retrain your brain, like
Mhm.
you said, to think outside the box and to start seeing things differently. Because it's all just a matter of our perspective, and we get locked into our way of seeing things or whatever. Then, when somebody like a child points out, well, there's a million ways of seeing that, then you have to look for it. It's almost like one of those Escher drawings where you have to look to see it differently. But once you do, then you can see it. So
Right.
once you train yourself to start looking at things differently, then eventually that's just how you are again. You know, you do start to see things.
yeah, even all problem solving. The reason you can't solve the problem is because you're in the box, and the
Right.
problem, the solution isn't in there. Like when the computer isn't doing what you want it to,
Mhm.
it's usually not because the computer's broken.
Right.
I think that might be why kids take to computers so quickly, other than the
Could
fact that
be.
they grew up with them,
Right.
because they can think out of the box and they go, oh yeah, their imagination is not limited like
Right.
like we are.
Yeah. Well, and I do think there's something to the fact that they grew up with them, because we had to
Absolutely.
learn them. It's kind of like if you learn a language as opposed to if you're a native speaker. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Things
It's a
little
good
bit
analogy.
different. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Us immigrants have
Right. Exactly.
will never be as good at it as
Never
a
do.
native speaker.
That's right.
Yeah.
No, I think people thinking outside the box makes the world a better place. I think improv makes people happy too. It's 2 hours. It's very stress relieving. It's 2 hour classes, 2 hours of fun, and again, being like a kid. I think it's youthful. It's like invigorating, you know. And so if people are happier, I think that helps make the world a better place too. I'm just guessing. If people were happy, they might be nicer. I don't know.
I think so. I think that's true.
There's no research to back that up. But
If people like each other, they're nicer, right?
yeah, they don't shoot each other usually.
Yeah, that's
I've never
not
shot
usually.
anyone I liked. I can say that with authority.
Yeah. I haven't either, come to think of it.
Yeah, see?
Yeah.
I think we've proven something here.
Yes. Well, I can see that improv could really help to make people's lives better. And that's what we're about here. We're harmonizing humanity. This is Brian Harmon, and we are harmonizing humanity.